We're continuing here with our series debunking Trent Horn's erroneous and failed attempt to rebut some of the things I said in my recent debate on Sedevacantism. In the previous video, we refuted Trent Horn's heresy and exposed his ignorance in regard to the baptism of heretics and Catholic teaching on the body of Christ. In this video, we will refute his false claims about Antipope Francis and proselytism, and we will refute similar false claims made by an individual named Michael Lofton. In the recent debate, I correctly stated the following in my opening statement.
Francis teaches that it's illicit to convince people of the Catholic faith.
In response to my statement on this matter, Trent Horn claimed this.
So this is a misrepresentation of what Pope Francis believes.
Horn said that my statement was a misrepresentation of Francis's position. No, my statement was totally and completely true, as we will see. Here's the proof that Antipope Francis teaches exactly what I said he does.
Non è lecito convincere della tua fede. Il proselitismo è il veleno più forte contro il cammino ecumenico.
As anyone can see, Francis says that it's illicit to convince people of your faith, which is what I said he taught. With that statement, Francis is teaching manifest heresy because what is directly opposed to the gospel is manifest heresy. More on that in a bit. Notice also that in this statement, Francis makes it clear that to him, convincing people of your faith equals proselytism. That's what Francis means when he rejects proselytism over and over again. He rejects using words or arguments to persuade, convince, try to convert, etc. Thus, what Francis means by proselytism is actually what Catholics mean by evangelization. But Trent Horn claims that when Francis rejects proselytism over and over again, he's only rejecting coercive and manipulative tactics.
The Pope believes, once again, you should not use coercive or manipulative tactics to cause people to become Catholics so we can feel good about ourselves. That's proselytism he condemns.
That's patently false, as we've already shown. Trent Horn is misleading people. Francis's statement that we just played, which Horn even quoted in his video, refutes Horn's false claim, but there's so much more. The fact that Horn cited this statement of Francis, wherein Francis explicitly condemns convincing people of the faith, and then proceeded to make his false argument about Francis's position, makes it astounding that anyone who watched his failed rebuttal didn't see the bankruptcy of his argumentation. But spiritual blindness is a real thing, and there's so much more to refute Trent Horn. Before we get to more clear proof on this matter, note that another extremely heretical defender of the Vatican II sect named Michael Lofton, whose material is filled with errors, heresies, and baseless claims, made the same fallacious argument. Lofton first questioned whether Francis even made the statement that I said he made.
But he said that Pope Francis says it is illicit to convince people of the Catholic faith. That's what he said. It is illicit to convince people of the Catholic faith. I haven't seen that before. I have not seen Pope Francis say that. I tried to find it. I couldn't find it.
This reveals how unfamiliar Michael Lofton is with the facts and the arguments that refute his false positions, even though he acts like he's heard almost all of them. No, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. Lofton then proceeded to make the same fallacious argument that Trent Horn did, but with an interesting admission. Lofton admitted that convincing people is evangelization, and he's correct on that.
The problem is, what does he mean by proselytism? That's the question. Is proselytism the same thing as evangelization? And that's the way that Dimond presented it, because he interpreted that to mean convince people, that is, evangelize them, bring them to the true faith. But I haven't heard Pope Francis say that. I have heard him say again, proselytism is a sin.
Lofton then concludes his point by claiming that Francis certainly doesn't reject convincing people of the faith.
But proselytism, as understood by Pope Francis, is an idea of coercion and force and unjust means. It's not an idea of expressing and preaching the truth. That's certainly not the case.
According to Michael Lofton, Francis certainly doesn't reject trying to convince people of the faith. So is Lofton credible? Is he reliable? Is his claim true? No, not at all. He's misleading people just like Trent Horn did. We've already demonstrated that with the quote we cited, but here's a lot more proof to refute both Trent Horn and Michael Lofton on this matter. On August 7th, 2013, Francis stated,
Voy a convencer a otro que sea católico? No.
There you have it. Francis emphatically and repeatedly rejects convincing others to become Catholic. In other words, he rejects true evangelization. His statement is quite clear and quite heretical. Before we get to even more proof, it should be noted that Trenthorn makes another mistake when he equates pressure with coercion. They are not the same. Trenthorn agrees with Antipope Francis that all forms of pressure on non-Catholics are forbidden, but he's wrong.
Pope Francis is saying that we should not pressure or use sales tactics to get people to convert in order to make us feel good that the team is growing. This is what he condemns as proselytism, and he's correct.
Although it's true that you must not coerce or force an unbaptized person to believe, that person must believe of his or her own free will, words, preaching, admonitions, etc. can be used to apply a certain pressure. That's not inconsistent with free will. For example, popes in the Middle Ages commanded Jews to be present at sermons that were designed to convert them. They could not be baptized against their will, but hearing the preaching, the threats of damnation, etc., were a kind of pressure put upon them to have them willingly embrace the true faith. Anti-Pope Francis considers any kind of preaching that's designed to convert or convince to be incompatible with human freedom, but he's totally wrong. He preaches a false gospel. Moreover, the Council of Trent teaches in Session 7, Canon 14 on baptism, that those who were baptized into the Church as infants can be pressed or constrained by punishments to live a Christian life, to fulfill what was promised in their name at baptism. So in the case of people who were baptized into the Church as infants, but then abandoned the Church, for example, for Eastern Orthodoxy or Protestantism, Francis's words against converting or proselytizing them are proven to be additionally heretical. They reject the teaching of the Council of Trent, in addition to, of course, the gospel and the dogma. Outside the Church, there is no salvation. But here's even more proof that Antipope Francis rejects even attempts to convert or convince others with words or preaching. In a speech in Georgia, October 1st, 2016, Francis stated, quote, "But what should I do with a friend, neighbor, an Orthodox person? Be open, be a friend, but should I make efforts to convert him or her? There is a very grave sin against ecumenism, proselytism. We should never proselytize the Orthodox," end quote. So once again, we see that Francis understands proselytism as making efforts to convert the person, and he rejects that as a mortal sin. That's manifest heresy. Also, the word proselytism means converting someone or trying to convert him. Many of these quotes were found by Brother Michael Dimond when he went through the speeches of the anti-popes since 1968. Francis does believe that if someone sees you living your life and is, quote, attracted by it, and decides to convert, then that person could convert. That's what he considers to be evangelization, but he rejects using arguments or words to try to convert or convince people. Here's more proof on that matter. Francis's December 2nd, 2017 press conference, quote, "The Church grows not through proselytizing. One young man asked me this question: what should I say to a university classmate, a friend, a good person, but who is atheist? What should I tell him in order to change him, to convert him?" This was the response of Francis. "The last thing you should do is to say something. Peace begins to be broken in this field when proselytism begins, and there are many types of proselytism," end quote.
Uno mi ha fatto questa domanda: cosa devo dire a un compagno di università, amico, bravo, ma che è ateo? Cosa devo dirle per cambiarlo, per convertirlo? La risposta è stata questa: l'ultima cosa che tu devi fare è dire qualcosa.
So here again, Francis rejects using words to try to change or convert the atheist. He defines that as proselytism. That's manifest heresy against the gospel, and frankly, these facts obliterate the false claims of Trent Horn and Michael Lofton. In his January 25, 2015 sermon at Vespers, Francis rejected Catholic apologetics and again trying to convert people. Quote, "So many past controversies between Christians can be overcome when we put aside all polemical or apologetic approaches and seek instead to grasp more fully what unites us, namely our call to share in the mystery of the Father's love revealed to us by the Son through the Holy Spirit. Christian unity, we are convinced, will not be the fruit of subtle theoretical discussions in which each party tries to convince the other of the soundness of their opinions. Our shared commitment to proclaiming the gospel enables us to overcome proselytism and competition in all their forms," end quote. So here he again explicitly rejects trying to convince the other of the soundness of your opinion. He rejects all forms of competition and apologetic approaches. He defines that again as proselytism. That's manifest heresy. Francis's June 21st, 2019 discourse, quote, not apologetics, not manuals, as we heard, but evangelizing. At the center is evangelizing, which is not the same thing as proselytizing. This docility to the Spirit implies a style of life and proclamation that is without a spirit of conquest, without a desire to proselytize, which is baneful, and without an aggressive intent to disprove the other, end quote. So here we see that Francis again rejects apologetics and an aggressive intent to disprove the other. He considers that to be proselytism. Thus, what he rejects as proselytism is in fact zealous Catholic evangelization and apologetics. His definition of evangelization is contrary to that of the Catholic Church because he's not Catholic. Francis's video message to National Catholic Youth Conference, November 21st, 2019, quote, Go and take the Lord, go and fill up your environments, even the digital ones, not with convictions, not to convince, not to proselytize, but rather by bearing witness to Jesus' tenderness and mercy, end quote.
Vayan y lleven al Señor, vayan y llenen sus ambientes, incluso los digitales, no de convicciones, no para convencer, no para hacer proselitismo, sino para testimoniar la ternura y la misericordia de Jesús.
Again, Francis rejects having convictions and trying to convince people. He calls that proselytism. That's manifest heresy. His rejection of having convictions is actually tantamount to apostasy. On May 20th, 2019, Francis rejected seeking new members for the Catholic Society. Quote, and so you proclaim Jesus Christ. This is not seeking new members for this Catholic Society. No, end quote. That's heresy. On August 11th, 2018, during a dialogue with young Italians, Francis stated, quote, once at lunch with young people in Krakow, a young man said to me, I have a problem at university because I have a friend who is agnostic. Tell me, Father, what should I say to this agnostic classmate to make him understand that ours is the true religion? I said to him, my dear fellow, the last thing that you should do is say something, end quote.
Una volta, in un pranzo con giovani a Cracovia, un giovane mi ha detto, io ho un problema nell'università, perché ho un compagno che è agnostico. Mi dica, padre, cosa devo dirle a questo compagno agnostico per farle capire che la nostra è la vera religione? Io ho detto, caro, l'ultima cosa che tu devi fare è dirle qualcosa.
Again, Francis rejects using words or arguments to convince people of the faith, exactly as we said he does. There's even more proof, but we've thoroughly proven our point and refuted Trent Horn and Michael Lofton. So when Trent Horn said this...
So this is a misrepresentation of what Pope Francis believes. The Pope believes, once again, you should not use coercive or manipulative tactics to cause people to become Catholic so we can feel good about ourselves. That's proselytism he condemns.
And when Michael Lofton said this...
Proselytism, as understood by Pope Francis, is an idea of coercion and force and unjust means. It's not an idea of expressing and preaching the truth. That's certainly not the case.
Were they telling the truth? No, they were misrepresenting the facts and deceiving their listeners. It's sad that anyone looks to those people as credible or reliable guides on the current situation. They are definitely not. They are in fact heretics and false teachers who lead people astray. What we stated about Francis's position is true, as we've proven in this video. So is Anti-Pope Francis's public position on this matter manifest heresy? Trent Horn says that even if you disagree with the way Francis talks about this issue, it would only be imprudent, not heresy. Trent Horn is wrong again. It is manifest heresy. It's a false gospel. On that matter, during the recent debate on Sedevacantism, after I said that Francis's statement that Lutherans follow the true faith of Jesus is manifest heresy, which it is, Michael Lofton made the following comment, quote, manifest heresy is not a way to describe a statement, but is a way to describe a person. We already have an inaccurate way of using terms, end quote. So while the debate was ongoing, Michael Lofton rather arrogantly claimed that it's wrong for me to describe a statement as manifest heresy. According to him, that term only properly describes a person. Well, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He suffers from category confusion. Here is St. Robert Bellarmine using the very term manifest heresy, just as I did, to describe an error or statement which expressly contradicts the gospel. Here's the Latin text. Also note that this passage from Bellarmine is not found in the English translation produced by Ryan Grant, which some people use. It was omitted, apparently by mistake, but it is found in Bellarmine's Latin work. Notice the exact term manifest heresy. In this passage, the word errorem and the term manifestam heresim are in the same case, the accusative case, because in context, Bellarmine connects the word error with the term manifest heresy. Bellarmine presupposes that certain errors or statements are properly termed manifest heresy, directly contrary to Michael Lofton. This is from Book 4, Chapter 12 on the Roman Pontiff, and the translation is, quote, "Neither can it be said that this error of Gregory is manifest heresy against the gospel, for Gregory did not teach that a wife can be divorced and another woman can be taken in marriage, which is expressly contrary to the gospel and the law of nature," end quote. Although Bellarmine says that this particular error of Gregory was not manifest heresy, he clearly presupposes that some errors are properly termed manifest heresy because they are expressly contrary to the gospel or Catholic dogma. In the very next sentence, he gives an example of what is expressly contrary to the gospel and thus manifestly heretical. So Bellarmine uses the term manifest heresy just as I did to describe a false position or statement or error that's expressly opposed to the gospel or dogmatic truth. Michael Lofton is completely wrong, which should not be a surprise. And when you make arrogant claims like he did in an attempt to discredit someone and you are totally wrong, as he is, you show that you don't have credibility. There are so many similar false claims and statements that Michael Lofton arrogantly makes that I could perhaps go on for hours refuting them. When it comes to these matters, that is, controversies about the Vatican II sect, the salvation dogma, etc., Trent Horn, Michael Lofton, and Reason and Theology have no credibility. They are completely unreliable, as we've proven in this video. They make lots of false claims that they can't back up, and they will lead you astray. Also, in On the Church Militant, Chapter 16, Bellarmine uses almost the exact same term in the same way. He refers to people who openly leave the church through the manifest profession of heresy. Thus, he again uses the word manifest to describe the error or position expressed. Even when you think about it logically, Michael Lofton's claim is shown to be baseless. The term heretic describes the individual. The term heresy describes the false position or belief or statement which the individual accepts or promotes. Heresy is therefore a way to describe a statement, and when a statement is expressly contrary to basic gospel truth or obvious dogmatic teaching, it is properly termed manifest heresy, as we see in Bellarmine and as I correctly used the term. Francis's position that it's illicit and wrong to try to convince people of the faith is expressly contrary to the gospel and thus manifestly heretical. It's a rejection of what the church has always believed and preached, and it's obviously also a denial of the dogma outside the church. There is no salvation. It's also contrary to the Council of Trent in regard to those baptized into the church as infants, as we've shown. Francis's heresy on this matter by itself proves that he's a notorious heretic who preaches a false gospel and is not the Pope. Now, what people need to realize is that Michael Lofton is a neophyte even to the Vatican II sect. He returned to the Vatican II sect in late 2019. He hasn't even claimed to be Catholic for more than 3 years. He's changed his religion repeatedly. He was Jewish, then Charismatic Protestant, Reformed Protestant, then he became part of the Vatican II sect. Then he abandoned that in 2016 after Amoris Laetitia came out and became Eastern Orthodox. Then he fell away from that and entered the Vatican II sect in late 2019. And even when he started his channel a few years ago, he was promoting anti-Catholic heresies and Eastern Orthodoxy in various ways. In fact, here's what Michael Lofton said in 2020, just a few years ago, while he claimed to be Catholic, about the notorious anti-Catholic James White.
I greatly admire and appreciate Dr. White and much of what he does. I know that many Catholic and Orthodox have mixed feelings about Dr. White. I think he's great overall.
Frankly, that's just a satanic statement. I believe that Michael Lofton made it, even though he claimed to be Catholic at the time, because he wanted to have James White on his program or he wanted James White to mention him. That tells you a lot about Michael Lofton's character and why people like him are not graced with the true faith. Also, if you are familiar with Michael Lofton, definitely watch our video called "Does the Catholic Church Condemn All the Circumcised?" It exposes Lofton's shocking errors and heretical statements about the Council of Florence and his failure to make proper distinctions.
But, as some rightly note, it does say some things about circumcision that don't fit.
In fact, he promotes heresies on a variety of topics. He's an astounding modernist heretic. It's sad that anyone looks to him as a reliable guide on these matters. He's definitely not. In fact, this year, 2022, within the last few months, Michael Lofton posted the following heresy against Catholic dogma on the Eucharist. Lofton stated, quote, "The Catholic view is not that we literally eat Christ's flesh in the Eucharist. The view is we truly and sacramentally eat his flesh," end quote. Lofton thought that sacramental reception of the Eucharist means that Christ's flesh is not literally eaten, but he's totally wrong. Sacramental reception and literal reception of the Eucharist are not mutually exclusive. What Lofton posted is actually heresy. It's a denial of defined Catholic dogma and a rejection of the teaching of Scripture on the Eucharist. Christ's flesh is literally consumed in the Eucharist. As John 6:55 says, "For my flesh is meat indeed, and my blood is drink indeed." Lofton was corrected for his heresy by a number of people online who, unlike him, know what the Catholic Church teaches on the Eucharist. I don't know if Lofton changed his heretical view on that matter or not. There's a lot more we could say about Trent Horn and Michael Lofton and their errors, but that's all for this video.